Okay, so welcome everyone to this online presentation about DNA Light's product called DNA Health. I'm Anne-Catherine Færgemann. I'm a co-founder of Nordic Laboratories and DNA Life. I do lots of webinars, and normally I'm the host and not the presenter, but today it's different. And I'm going to take you on a journey through DNA health and give you clues and ideas as how to act and react based on some of the results. I'm going to cover a sample report, so and through that, hopefully I'll get through the points, and hopefully this is relevant enough for you when you sit and go through your result. If it's not enough and you need more in details, you're always welcome to reach out. Easy would be to reach out to Andrew, because you might want a personal consultation with one of our practitioners who can then cover the results so it becomes more your result and it's specific to your situation and maybe your symptoms, health challenges, or health goals for a future strategy. So yeah, basically that you have a room or a space where it's your space and covering your specific results. So that's what I think we should be doing now. And of course, my favorite topic is biohacking. It's functional medicine, it's health optimization, it's personalized medicine, it's N equals 1. There's so many definitions on what we are actually working with. But this is the Nordic Biohacker group, so let's use that word for now. I'll try and see if I can stick to that. So I'm just going to share my screen and pull up a test result. So if you want to, maybe you could pull out your own result and have that on the side as I go through this result with you. As you can see, it's a complete sample report that we have put together. And I'm just going to go from the beginning. This is where your name will be and your date of birth and the dates that we reported the test result. Then there's a introduction to what we are testing, which is genes, and it's PCR. And we are looking at SNPs, so Single Nucleotide Polymorphisms, so small changes in the genes, changes that are normal within the normal population. They are low penetrance genes, it's called, so not high penetrance gene. A high penetrance gene would be BRCA gene, the gene for breast cancer. So that would be more a diagnostic tool. That's not what we are working with. We cannot diagnose based on these results. We can only see these changes in the genes within the normal population. However, these changes can impact the way our body expresses itself, or the way we react to the environment. So yeah, that's what we are measuring. And then to read your results, you will see that we have made like a color code, or where there are genes that has no impact. And when we say no impact, then it's not a positive gene. It doesn't do anything good for you. It doesn't do anything negative for you. There's no impact, meaning that there is nothing in the literature that says that this gene variant has an impact on your health situation or your biochemistry. Then we can have low impact, moderate impact, and high, probably related to something negative, like a negative health outcome. And then we have created this beneficial impact, because some genes are good. So at least of those that we are reporting on. So that's just how you read the color code that we are giving each of the SNPs that we are looking at. Then we have created a priority table. And this is an algorithm that we have created that takes all the results from your report puts them into a priority. So which areas should we prioritize? And of course, we should prioritize everything that's that comes up with a risk SNP. However, sometimes we need to prioritize which should we work on first, because putting together like 7 different treatment strategies, and you have to change your lifestyle and your diet, and you might have to take different supplements and so on, can for some people be a big thing. So we created this algorithm for practitioners to and their patients to understand which areas is most relevant to work on. So you can see the I'm just gonna take this out a little bit. You can see the biological area that we are looking at, and then you can see the priority. So in this case, it's detoxification, bone health, and insulin sensitivity that are the ones that we need to prioritize. However, lipid metabolism, methylation, and oxidative stress comes in as moderate. So somehow we should perhaps build this in as well, or at least have it in the back of our head, because that will be the next tier on the ladder that we would start working with once we've got the high impacts sorted, and we can see there's a strategy, maybe a lifelong strategy that works. It's been incorporated in the lifestyle. Then we can take the moderate areas and work on those. Or if it's a super biohacker patient, then we can just model it all up and get going. So then on the next page, there is like a report summary to the biological areas that were high or priority, or so you can see detoxification, and these are some general recommendations to when there's issues in detoxification, or when there is a high priority, then this comes up. So this is not specific to your SNPs, but it's specific to when someone has a high impact or a high priority on this area. So this is this for biohackers? Well, I will leave that for you to evaluate if you think this is good, but sometimes we have patients who has no clue about health, and then it's perhaps a good idea to tell them that they have to increase their intake of cruciferous vegetables, which is broccoli, cauliflower, kale, preferably organic, and have a portion of that per day, where biohackers may already know this, and then maybe this is not so relevant. So then, yeah, those were the first ones. Here is the report summary on the biological areas. Then it moves into this food responsiveness summary, but I'll explain that to you in more details. We also have the vitamin metabolism summary, and here we have the full summary table. So I hope you are following me, because on the summary table we have so we have the biological areas, we have the gene name, we have the gene variant, and we have your result. In this case and in this situation, one letter is from the mother and the other letter is from the father. I can't say which is from who. You would have to test your parents to see what they're carrying and try and see if you can work it out based on that. But if it's CC, both mother and father have given or passed on a CC to you. If it's AG, either mother or father has passed on an A, either mother or father has passed on a G. So, so we don't put too much into that. You can look at your parents' traits. Do they have some of the symptoms related to this area? And then maybe you can work your way around it that way. But this summary table is probably the one that I really just use when I go through a test result with a patient, because it's a nice overview and you have in kind of like one page. So the first page are all the biological areas, and the second page has insulin sensitivity, which is also a biological area, but then we move more into some of the food responsiveness and vitamin metabolism. So we have iron overload, caffeine sensitivity, PUFA, so polyunsaturated fatty acid metabolism, salt sensitivity, bitter taste, alcohol metabolism, and then lactose and gluten intolerance genes. And then at the bottom here, we have vitamin A, D, B12, and C vitamins, where we are able to look at SNPs that will then indicate if we have a biochemistry that makes us need more or measure vitamin D in the blood or B12. It's a little bit more challenging measuring vitamin A and vitamin C. But at least we have indications here on the genes if we have extra need, you can say. Then the report moves into a more descriptive area. So for lipid metabolism, we've got these genes that we are looking at, the genetic variation and the example person's results, and then the algorithm that we have created that gives us, and this is based on the literature, that gives us the gene impact. Now, then it moves into more specific for each of the genes. So the LPL is related, and this is all related to lipid metabolism, but then you can read more about what it's about, and basically it's about removing all the circulation on VLDL and triglycerides, and this can have an indication in regards to plasma lipids and insulin concentration. In this case, it's CC, so there is no risk here. Then we move into the CETP gene, which is related to the metabolism of HDL. HDL is the good cholesterol, the one that when we go to the doctor and then we want it to be high. In Danish, it's called, because we have a word which is great or good, or and that starts with H, so we call it herlig DHL, which is a good DHL, so we can remember it that way. So there is one dot, so we might have to just consider this. How can we support high ADH levels, because that has a beneficial effect on cardiovascular disease. So, and then the recommendation is a diet with alpha-linolenic acid enriched, and a low cholesterol diet is effective in decreasing VLDL and LDL. So that's what's recommended based on this, so that we have a focus on the whole lipid panel. Then there is the ApoC3. Again, it has a role in regards to high cholesterol or low cholesterol, and has a metabolism there. This patient doesn't have issues on this one. Then there is ApoE, and we can have ApoE2, E3, or E4. And most of you biohackers have probably heard about the ApoE4, because that's the cardiovascular risk gene. It's also the gene that is related to Alzheimer's disease. So if there is an ApoE4, most often there will be a high impact on the metabolism. So E4 carriers have a tendency to have high cholesterol levels, and then you need to address that through diet, and especially like saturated fats is increasing the ApoE or the cholesterol when you're ApoE4 carrier, and then alcohol smoking is also things that would be good to be aware of. Then we have the PON1, that's looking at an enzyme that protects LDL and HDL from oxidation. So that's moving a little bit more into some of the biochemistry. So you have the, let's say, the LDL molecule, which is a lipomolecule, and a fat can go rancid, or it can oxidize. And once this is oxidized, it becomes more toxic to the body, or more dangerous, or can play more part in atherosclerosis and blood clotting and etc. So if you have challenges with the PON1, so have these dots here, maybe also the high risk with the ApoE4, I strongly recommend that you maybe just go to the doctor and have your cholesterol levels checked. But if you want to do more than that, then I would suggest that you do a test called LipoScan, including oxidized LDL. This test, it's a blood draw, so it needs that you are in a country where you live a place where someone can draw blood on you, because it's a venous blood draw. But this test is actually looking into the particle size of the LDL, so the bad cholesterol. But this is something doctors, like general doctors, don't do. They just measure cholesterol, LDL, HDL, but they don't go into the particle size of the LDL. And there are several particle sizes, up to 7, and 1 is a big size and 7 is a small size. And we actually want the LDL particles to be as big as possible. The smaller they are, the bigger surface we get, and they are easier to become oxidized. And once they're oxidized, they play a more potent role in regards to atherosclerosis and blood clotting, and inflammation in the bloodstream. If you have a lot of, or rather, if your pattern is skewed towards the small LDL particle sizes, we might need to look at, well, diet and lifestyle, but something that drives LDL particles to be small is sugar and insulin resistance. And in this case, with this test result, we actually have high priority on insulin resistance. So it could be relevant to move in and do such a test to get more knowledge. Let me just go back here. So that's how I cover the lipid metabolism area. Then we move into methylation. Methylation is this biochemical process that happens in all our cells. It's turning on genes, it's turning off genes, it's helping us to detoxify hormones and other chemicals. So it's also helping us to, like, we can methylate stress hormones. So if we are COMT carriers and we are AA, then we might be slower in metabolizing stress hormones and catecholamines, so adrenaline and noradrenaline. So some people who have COMT genes, if they might feel that they become like overstimulated and that they need like just to sit and look into a white wall before they can sleep. Let's say they've been to an event in the evening and then they just can't just go to bed. They just need to find themselves, and then they can sleep based on that. This gene it's related to an enzyme, and I'll just move into that a little bit later, but that enzyme has magnesium as a cofactor. So if you see you have COMT and then 1A or 2As, then you definitely would want to take magnesium. You also may want to cut down on green tea and quercetin products, because that actually has the opposite effect on this gene. But otherwise, we are, I'll just start from the bottom at the top and then go into the MCH-FD1 is a folate enzyme. So this will tell us if we need to be aware if we need to take more folate, but also choline plays a central role in this pathway. So if we have 1, 2, or 3 dots here, we need to consider folate, we need to consider choline if we're getting enough choline in our diet. Then there is the MCH-FR gene. That's again looking at folate, and actually depending on how many dots you have here, but it's the T relates to reduced function, and it can be reduced as much as all the way down so that it's only working 30%. By taking folate and some of the other B vitamins that is related to methylation, we can make it work better. So when we have a T here, we need to think folate and methylation cofactors. This is another MCH-FR SNP that we are looking at. Again, if we had blue dots here and C here, then we would need to have focus on folate. MTR is a gene that's related to what's it called? Homocysteine. And the G allele, so this is a positive, you see there's a dot in it. The G allele is associated with decreased levels of homocysteine. Homocysteine is a marker that if it's high, it's a risk marker for cardiovascular disease. And if it's high, or rather you have absence of the G allele, then you need again to focus on getting homocysteine past to increase the metabolism around homocysteine. I'm just gonna go into another report, because if you have challenges in your methylation genes, we have other tests that can actually, so we know the genes, so that's a genotype, and that's so like we did with the lipo scan, we have the genes, and then we can measure the phenotype, what actually goes on in the body, and that's what we can do with the methylation as well. So we can look at, here you have the methylation overview. Methionine is an amino acid, it comes from our diet, and it is metabolized to something called SAM, and then that is further metabolized to SAH, and that is then metabolized to homocysteine. And we don't want high homocysteine, because that has a cardiovascular risk. And then, so in order to get homocysteine down, we need to make sure it's recycled into methionine. And it's recycled into methionine through some other genes that are folate and B12 dependent. But it can also be further metabolized down through a pathway called transsulfuration, where we are going to, and I'm just going to go back to this CBS gene, because that's the gene that takes homocysteine down the transsulfuration pathway. So that gene, so that gene is here. CBS, the gene sits here, and that is B6 dependent. So if we have dots on the CBS gene, and that has a high impact in CBS gene, we want to take B6. Some just like normal B6, but maybe also some as P5P, which is a more active form of B6. I suggest a combination. There's some knowledge that indicate that the absorption of P5P is not that great, but then you want to give the P5P because that's more active than the B6 that needs to be created or made active in the system. So anyway, it's just to show you some of the biochemistry that is related to the genes that we are working with here. And the COMT gene I mentioned, which was the stress hormones and detoxification as well, and that was magnesium dependent. So I'm kind of like hoping here now you're beginning to see the pattern. That's how we're going through it. So we had the cardiovascular area or the lipid area / dementia risk, late onset dementia risk for the ApoE4 gene. And then we need to focus on the lipid panel. We need to make sure that we don't have small particle sizes of LDL. We need to make sure that the LDL we have is not oxidized, and we can measure that. Then when we move into the methylation, if we have bad genes, well, we need to see if these genes are turned on in a negative way, and so that they have negative health impact on us as it stands now. And we need to make sure that we have specific nutrients in place. If it's not possible to do a blood draw where you are, then it's not possible for the liposcan and the oxidized LDL, but for the methylation, we can look at some methylation markers. So B12 and folate and B6 markers we can look at in urine through organic acid testing, and they are just as sufficient as if it is in blood. It just isn't that blood mesh. It just isn't all these markers that we are getting. It's just a different way of looking at it, but a really neat way because it's easy access to get morning urine. So then we move into detoxification. And there are both phase 1 and phase 2 genes that we are looking at here. So CYP1A1 is a phase 1 gene, like a cytochrome P450 gene. Some of you have probably heard about that. And the other GSTM1s are phase 2 detoxification genes. So the CYP1A1 is helping us to detoxify carcinogenic effects based on, it can be like if you fry meat, so the black from the meat, and other like estrogen, how we metabolize estrogen. And actually, I'm just going while I'm talking. I'm not sure if that's possible, but I'm just gonna see if I can find a sample report called Dutch testing, Dutch complete, go to page, because CYP1A1 is related to the metabolism of estrogen. So this is a hormone test in urine that we are looking at. And this is relevant for both men and women, but I will just show you this overview here because we have estrogen, an estrogen pool, you can say, and this estrogen pool must preferably be metabolized through this CYP1A1 gene. And then it goes down to be methylated, that we've just spoken about. The COMT gene is related to the metabolism here. So this is a protective pathway of estrogen. And if this CYP1A1 is not really working, or we have SNPs in it, so that there's a high impact on our genetic test, then maybe some of the estrogen is pushed towards what's called the 4-hydroxyestrone marker. And that's a more cancerous marker. This is the estrogen that is related to some of the estrogen sensitive cancers, such as breast cancer, ovarian cancer, because this estrogen can go and stick onto the DNA and create what's called adducts, and that then changes the expression of the gene and how this gene is copied. So that's something we need to address and look at if there are things related here with CYP1A1. Then we move more into the phase 2 detoxification areas, and these genes, you can have a deletion. So either it's present or it's deleted. It's inserted or present or it's deleted. We call it insertion or deletion. So either you have it or you don't have it. And that's quite normal not to have it. It's not a disease not to have it, but it just puts pressure on your detoxification function. So this person is not so lucky because they actually have a deletion in both the GSTM1 and the GSTT1. So in order to it's not like with the other genes, oh, let's give magnesium, then it will work better. These genes aren't there, so we can't make them work better, but we can make the other genes, so the GSTP1 and other detoxification genes work better. So we just try and like encourage the other genes to work as good as they can. So, and phase 2 detoxification through diet, we have a lot of focus on cruciferous vegetables. Allium is like garlic, onions, leeks, and cruciferous vegetables is broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, and stuff like that, cabbage. So, and of course so the challenge with that is that it kind of needs to be raw when we eat it. So we encourage people to eat at least one portion of preferably raw cruciferous vegetables per day, and also onions, etc. And the reason why it should be raw is because when it's cooked, it destroys the myrosinase, the enzyme in the food, so that the active components, now I've lost the word in my head, sulforaphane, there we go, sulforaphane is activated, and that can then impact our detoxification. So that's, we want it raw because when we chew in the cabbage, it activates this myrosinase that then activates the sulforaphane, and then we have the metabolic action in the body. So we of course have created this or taken on our board the Broccolox product, which is broccoli sprouts in a concentrated powder form, where we know exactly how much sulforaphane there is in a portion, and it's strongly regulated. And the manufacturer, if she is not satisfied with the level of sulforaphane and the quality of the product per se, she just destroys the batch. So we are very lucky that we have a partner like that, and can offer you the Broccolox product. And I'm sure that Andrew will share some information about the Broccolox product on Facebook as well for you. So basically what I do is I eat lots of cruciferous vegetables. I love I love broccoli into some hummus. And then I can eat raw, also cauliflower that way. And I love Brussels sprout salad and stuff like that. So I don't have a challenge eating these things. But I always so I put a little bit of Broccolox into my smoothie. So I kind of have several sources to get my sulforaphane from. So, but also when we have challenges in these genes, we need to look at the exposure to toxins that we experience. So we need to lower our toxic exposure. We need to eat organic. We need to look at all cosmetics and cream, body lotions, etc. that we're using, making it as clean as possible, so we don't put chemicals into us that puts extra overload on our liver that it has to detoxify. Yeah, so those are some areas that we need to like address as well when there's challenges in these genes. So NQ01 is this quinone reductase. Again, it's a detoxification gene, especially like on tobacco, smoke, diet, estrogens. Again, it protects the cells from oxidative stress, and it recycles or protects our CoQ10 levels, and CoQ10, coenzyme Q10, is very important for our energy production in our cells. So for ATP production, so it supports our mitochondrial health. Actually, we are very fortunate to have found a very, very good Q10 product as well that is highly active, and it's I did a podcast with a researcher and who has developed this product, and I think we can maybe share that with you. It's about an hour long, and it's highly detailed and highly nerdy. So if you don't like that, maybe you shouldn't watch it. But if you really like that, which I kind of think you do, then yeah, we can share it with you and send you some information. Then we move on to inflammation. This patient is very fortunate not to have that many genes that are high risk on inflammation. But basically, it's looking at interleukins. It's looking at genes that codes for inflammation. So, and of course, inflammation is not a bad thing necessarily. It's a good thing. It's there to protect us. But too much inflammation or uncontrolled inflammation is a bad thing. So it's again this balance of controlling the inflammation. And if you have lots of genes and high impact here, you need to think of an anti-inflammatory diet, focus on omega-3 fatty acids, ginger, curcumin, and lower again the exposure to things that can cause inflammation in the body, such as bad fats, sugar, alcohol, chemicals, so again organic diet, etc. So and there are just these different interleukins, and TNF alpha is also a cytokine that causes inflammation. So yeah, have a look at that and think an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. Here we're looking at oxidative stress, so genes that makes us go rancid, or genes that make us go rusty, genes that makes us age faster if they have high impact. And some of the genes are actually in favor for us. This person has a lucky gene, and but the others are less lucky. So have a look, an overview. Some of these are related to, like, if they are what's it called, if they are some of them are related to, so the GPX1 is related to selenium, so that's an antioxidant mineral, and otherwise some of them are related to foods. So the nitric oxide gene, the eNOS gene, we need to look at foods that can supply us with nitric oxide, could be beetroots. So if there's challenges here, that's an area that we can look at. So if there's high risk on the eNOS, it also might have an impact on our blood vessels, making them less smooth. We want smooth blood vessels. So there's areas like that to look at. Then there is MSOD, or SOD2. This gene has different names, and again, if that is a risk gene, then we need to increase our intake of fruit and vegetables, so we can get lots of antioxidant intakes that way. And the CAT genes co-encodes this other, this catalase enzyme again. So again, if there is in this case, it's actually a protective gene. So this will protect our cells from getting oxidized, where if you don't have the C gene, you have T instead, then you're at higher risk of oxidative stress. And then the recommendation for this gene was to eat lots of antioxidant and lots of polyphenol-rich food. So the polyphenols is like in red berries, it's in like green tea, the catechins in green tea. But if you have the COMT gene, you may not want to do that, but kind of have to like find a way. But pomegranate and cranberry, blueberries, some of the red superfoods could be used here. And the GPX gene, the glutathione peroxidase 1 gene, is related to selenium. So if there's challenges here, you may want to take supplements of selenium, or again a little bit with the cruciferous vegetables, where you take because you can have Brazil nuts or para nuts. They are rich in selenium, so you can take it from foods and nuts, and then if you kind of run out of those nuts, then you can take some selenium supplements. So kind of like just ensure that you have enough selenium in your diet. Then we look at genes that code for bone health. The VDR is the vitamin D receptors, and the collagen 1A1 gene, they're all related to bone health. But VDR receptors are also related to other health areas. So we basically need to look at vitamin D when there's issues here. This person has big challenges, and they're probably, I would suspect that there runs some osteoporosis in the family based on this. So when we have SNPs in the VDR receptors, we need to for sure make sure that we have high enough vitamin D levels. And for that, if you can either, of course, get your doctor to measure it, but if you can't get that, then we have a blood spot vitamin D test that you can order, and then you can do it at home, and then and get the results. So just to show you the sample report, it looks like this. It's reported in American levels. And so depending on where you are, but in Europe we use nanomole per liter, and in America they use nanogram per milliliter. So if this is the result here, we need to multiply with 2.5 to get the European marker. And well, there's different opinions on what the level of vitamin D should be. I just saw a report from a Kuala Lumpur lab, and they report a vitamin D deficiency when the level is below 75 nanomole per liter. In Denmark it's 50. So if you are above 50 but below 75, you don't have a deficiency in vitamin D. But if you are below 75 in Kuala Lumpur, then you have a vitamin D deficiency. Now, the question is, what is the optimal level? When we look at like research, there is like, and in regards to vitamin D levels and alcohol or mortality, then it's a U-shaped curve. And the lowest mortality is around 130 mark, 125, 130 mark. So that's for sure something that we want to aim at. But if we have genes that are crap, so genes that, oh, let me find it. Oh, yeah, sorry. So genes that looks like this, then we may want to be up even higher, because these are related to the receptors. So if the receptors are not working that well, and there isn't that much vitamin D, then, but if there's lots of vitamin D, we can kind of overflow the receptors and then get the metabolic action from vitamin D. So it may be that if we have vitamin D receptors, that we should not just be at 130, but we should maybe be at 175. Again, depending on the lab, but the reference levels can go up as high as to 250 nanomole per liter. That's a normal level as well. And then there is the collagen. The type 1 collagen is a protein that's used in bone formation. So if there's issues here, we may need to support collagen function. We do that with protein, and we do it with vitamin C. So we need to ensure that we have enough protein in the diet. We need to make sure we get enough vitamin C. We can, of course, take collagen as well as further support. Then we move into insulin sensitivity. So yeah, diabetes risk. And if there's genes here, there are both some genes that makes us respond to glucose in a worse way if we have a diet rich in saturated fat. So that's sometimes something we need to be aware of. The PPAR gamma in this case is related, like it's protective role. And when we have PPAR gamma, or rather those with this gene and this combination with the G result, has lower fasting insulin and improved insulin sensitivity. So those with C has worse. So if you have CC here, then people have higher fasting insulin and like worse insulin response, you can say. Again, here we have a result that's TT. So when we look at the population, we can see that those people have worse insulin sensitivity, and we need to look at, again, a diet intake and how that impacts the response. So it says here, so the T allele has been associated with less weight loss in response to diet and lifestyle intervention, especially when fat intake is high, and individuals with the TT genotype require diet and lifestyle changes that impact insulin sensitivity. So then moving a little bit into like a keto diet, but we need to be aware of what type of keto diet. It probably shouldn't be like a saturated fat keto diet, but more like a green keto diet with vegetables, so that it's more lean, which is a little bit contradictory when we're talking about a keto diet. But those are some of the areas that we need to consider. Then there is this SLC2A2 gene that codes for these GLUT2. These are these glucose transport, what are they called? Cells, or I've forgotten. But anyway, we can activate the GLUT receptors by exercise. So when there's challenges here, we for sure need to balance and make sure we have a flat blood sugar, and movement is important, because that will remove the glucose as well, will remove the glucose. So then when they look at population studies, they can see those with GLUT2 genotype, they have a higher daily intake of sugars from sweets, such as baked goods and chocolate, sweetened beverages, etc., rather than fruit and vegetables, which is suggesting that there is an underlying glucose sensing mechanism that regulates this food intake. So we need to control ourselves and maybe wear a monitor to understand how we are responding to foods, to understand our spikes, to understand our lows, see how we are responding to foods in general. Then we have the FTO gene as well, and it's the A genotype that's related to higher BMI and higher body fat, so weight is something we need to look at here, and the suggestion is to modify the diet to moderate intake of carbohydrates, increase MUFA, which is like olive oil, and decrease saturated fat, and manage the overall fat intake and physical exercise. So we're talking about, diabetes prevention for sure. Then we move into the food responsiveness area, where the HFE is the hereditary iron gene. Some people have this gene and they have high iron levels, and high iron is related to rusty, oxidative stress, etc. So if you have this gene, you may need to counteract it, and the best way to do that is actually to take blood out, donate blood if they want your blood, or at least get rid of some of the blood to get the iron levels down. Then there is the caffeine sensitivity gene, so that helps us metabolize caffeine. So should we drink the coffee late at night or early in the morning, or how does it? So it's basically looking at if you're a slow metabolizer or fast metabolizer. If you're a fast metabolizer, it probably won't impact your sleep, but if you're a slow metabolizer, it can be relevant to sport if you're using caffeine for sport to optimize your performance in sport. If you're a fast metabolizer, you need to take it closer to your exercise time. If you're slow, you can take it further or more before, so that then you can time your caffeine intake that way. Then we're looking at salt sensitivity in response to high blood pressure. So if you have high blood pressure and you have genes here, it might be relevant to spare the salt. Then we are looking at a bitter taste gene. So if you taste bitterness a lot, you might have a tendency not to eat bitter foods, but prefer sweet foods. So that can have an impact in how you choose the foods and have an impact in regards to insulin sensitivity or obesity. Then we have the alcohol metabolism, the alcohol dehydrogenase gene that most Caucasians have. Asians often don't have it, and this is a gene that makes us detoxify alcohol. Doesn't say that we can handle alcohol well, but and that we don't get hangovers or anything. It just says that the gene is working normal here. Then we have the gene for lactose intolerance. So in this case, so the thing with Caucasians is that they have kept the ability to break down lactose, where other populations, African and Asians, are at higher risk of this gene not being present earlier in life, and then they don't tolerate lactose, like celiac marker, but there is some I'm just getting a message that my internet is unstable, but I'm still on. But there's also research that even though you don't have celiac disease, so let's say you have irritable bowel syndrome, and you have some of the gluten or celiac genes, that it creates more leakiness in the gut, or that the symptoms are worse. And then, of course, it's highly recommended to remove gluten. Or if you don't have any of those symptoms and you have these genes, then maybe it's a good thing to turn down on the intake, or it's not necessarily turned on the gene. So just because you have a gene doesn't mean that you will get celiac disease or that you will have gluten intolerance. It kind of needs to be turned on. So these are the different expressions to this area that we just went through here. And then we move into the vitamin metabolism, where some are related to the metabolism of vitamin A. So how good, so with vitamin A, we get vitamin A as beta-carotene from carrots, let's just say that. And then we need to metabolize it into retinol, the active vitamin A. And so this is in telling us that that we might need higher levels of beta-carotene, or maybe it's better to do like cod liver oil, so you get the retinol A that way. So these two genes are related to vitamin A. Then we have more vitamin D genes. So if there's challenges again, then we may need to supplement and take more vitamin D in order to ensure that the blood levels are optimal. Then we have the FUT2 gene, which encodes an enzyme that is involved in the vitamin B12 absorption and transport between cells. So if you have FUT2, you may have low B12 levels. So then of course you can look at your dietary sources. If you're getting enough from your diet, but the B12 has a long journey, because you get B12 from blood, meat, and then it goes into your stomach. You need to digest it, and then you need to create what's called intrinsic factor, and the intrinsic factor needs to travel down to the gut, where it should be absorbed and then as B12. So that's an area to look at. Then if the GSTT1 gene that we look at in detoxification is deleted, we may also need to make sure that we get enough vitamin C. So, and then you can put some notes here. So that's, I hope this has given some ideas for you to look at your result and understand them better yourself. And make notes. So like, what nutrients should I be aware of? Are there other tests that I need to do? Reach out to Andrew if you need support or have questions or want to do further testing or have a consultation, or if you're interested in some of the supplements, then we are here to support you. And if just reach out on Facebook or on a direct message to him. So I'm just going to stop share here, and then I guess I wish you all a beautiful day. It's soon holiday time, so I also wish you happy holidays. Bye everyone.